The topic of this video is an investigation called Semantic Feature Analysis Model Approach in Foreign Language Learning Material. The first thing that comes to your mind when we listen to that title is, what is Semantic Feature Analysis Model? Okay? But we're gonna go into that in a moment. First of all, we need to know what this investigation addresses. It addresses students' problems in translation and in writing. Translation, we can say, is the mediating meaning of one language to another. And writing, we can say that it is marking in a coherent way words on a paper. Okay? Those two things are the most difficult skills to master in a second language, and one of the main problems that students have with translating and writing is distinguishing words that have similar meaning. So now, semantic feature analysis, or ASF, is when we relate different words using text. In other words, we have two different words who have similar meaning. We relate them and we see the semantic features that they have in common and that they have different, in order to know how to use each word. We can do it using a matrix. A matrix is a set of things that are related with one another. A set of words that are related with one another. Now, it has something to do with the theory of schema. This theory states that knowledge is organized in units. Those units are called schemata. Okay? We build, with the ASF, we build semantically related categories, also called the matrix that I already told, and we visualize familiar and unfamiliar words, integrating prior knowledge with new information or knowledge that we acquired, which means that based on the knowledge that you have previously, you're gonna now have more information or have more knowledge related with what you have before. And we also have meaning for unknown words. This meaning comes from analogies and examples. Now, the steps for using FSA in foreign language learning in the classrooms are the following. We have two different strategies. The first one is you select some words that have similar meaning and ask your students to find articles or essays with those verbs. Then you assist your students and list the features and properties of those verbs. After you have done that, you review this chart, because you're going to do it in a chart, and you ask them to read the text where they got the verbs from. And finally, this is related to translation, by the way. And finally, you ask them which verb word best describes the topic or the essence of the topic that we're talking about. The other strategy is that you place it has to be done in physical space, because you have to place 3 similar objects in front of your class. Then you're gonna give them a chart listing with the object names on the across the top, and then you ask your students to list more objects below. After that, you ask them to compare those words, those objects, by adding a plus or a minus. Once you have done that with your students, you're gonna have a definition created based on features that distinguish those objects. And that would be the strategies, the two different strategies, when you implement an FSA in your classroom relating to translation and writing. Now, in this investigation, they did a data collection technique, which is first observation, then interviewing, and finally a test. They had 45 participants, where they were 28 female and 17 male. They were students from the first semester of the Department of English Literature in the University of Villarreal in Indonesia. When doing or when implementing FSA, the FSA method, first you have to find the meaning of the word, then you have to find sentences when this word is used, and finally make a semantic feature difference of the verbs that you're using. Okay, now relating to the method, they did a learning achievements measure before starting to implement SFA in the class. We have here the first graph, where you can see the pre-test result. In this pre-test, we can see that most of the students had a low frequency, a low categorization in the test. Then we have after the first cycle of this investigation, which is 3 meetings using FSA, and we have an increase of 10.82 compared to the pre-test that I showed before. And finally, we have this graph when they're showing the advance of the students, how the students have advanced after 6 meetings. The increase have been of 11.44 compared to the first cycle. Now, after this, the investigators did some interviews to the students, to the participants, when they have stated that all the material was designed for their needs. What does it say? What does it say to us? It says that we need to do or to prepare the learning material for the students based on the needs of the students. How did they do that? Because in the pre-test they identified the problems that the students were having to distinguish some words and worked on them using the SFA method. And finally, as a conclusion, we know that after 6 meetings implementing FSA, we have seen a significant increase on students' learning achievement in writing and translation. So we can know for a fact, we can know that SFA is actually and is indeed a good method to learn to write and translate. We also know that SFA is a strategy in foreign language learning, as I stated before, and is also a strategy in composing teaching material, because you need to know what the needs of your students are in order to create your learning material and to make those materials significant to for your students so they can learn much better. Yeah, that will be all my presentation, and that will be the end of the investigation.